What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of A Place for Humans podcast. This is episode 30, and it's with my friend Sarah Landry, who is, I kind of met her in a peculiar kind of circumstance. There was this ashram in India who had all kinds of controversy going on while I was near it. There was a bunch of child abuse and kidnaps and rape and all kinds of just crazy stuff. So the sort of cat in me, the curiosity in me, I wanted to go sneak into this ashram and figure out what was going on. So I did. You can see that video on YouTube. It's sneaking into the Nityananda cult is what I called it. Sarah, for many years, was the face of the Nityananda cult. And she left around maybe a few months or a year before. She left before I snuck in there. So after I snuck in and I put this video on YouTube, I kind of became friends with some of the people that have left the cult. And Sarah, her story is very interesting to me. So this is a conversation I'm really excited about. So I hope you guys enjoy. And if you're interested, just type in Nityananda on YouTube or Google or anything. You'll find all kinds of stuff to go through. You have a big rabbit hole to dive into. So episode 30, A Place for Humans podcast. My name is Dakota. Enjoy. That's it. That's all I got to say. Boom. And we're live.
Nice.
Okay, so today on this episode, number 30 of A Place for Humans podcast, it's me and JR. Say hello, JR.
You always stop talking. You're like, hey. You want me to say hey? I thought you were going to keep going.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. But say hello.
Yeah. Hey. So today on Dakota's podcast, we're going to be talking to Sarah Landry. Okay, Dakota, you say something.
And Sarah Landry, she's really cool. I like Sarah. She was, so for those of you guys that follow me on YouTube, you might have remembered that time I snuck into the Nityananda ashram in Bangalore. And the reason I snuck in there was because there was a lot of accusations of child abuse and rape and murder and just the craziest cult stuff ever, typical cult stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm in Bangalore. I gotta go. And Sarah was super invested into this to the highest degree. And she's actually in here right now, so I'm going to accept her. Ooh, I'm nervous. Okay, I think I got it. Hello? Hey, there you are.
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Finally. I finally get to see you, kind of in person.
Yes. How many months have we been planning this?
A long time. So we were just we were just giving you a little introduction, kind of.
Okay.
But maybe you should do it. It might be a little bit juicier if you give us a little backstory.
Or less juicy, because I've gotten so so many times I've sat down in podcasts and interviews to tell my story that it doesn't even feel real anymore. But and hi, nice to meet you, JR.
Hi, Sarah. Nice to meet you too.
Thank you.
And you completely just go by Sarah now?
Yes. Yeah, just by Sarah.
Cool.
So I think my story is something that could probably have happened to really anybody. When I was 20, I moved to Vancouver to go to art school, and then kind of got disillusioned by the academia. It sort of felt like something I had always done out of love became a chore, doing it for grades instead of for expression, genuine expression. And very close to my art school, there was a lot of kind of mystical shops, like crystal shops and new age bookstores. And I kind of found myself more drawn to that than to the fine arts world. And so instead of going for my third year towards a 4-year fine arts degree, I decided not to go back to school and started making crystal jewelry and reading tarot cards and, experimenting with different meditations and spiritual practices. And
what year was this?
That would have been 2007. 2007, when I left art school and kind of started pursuing more of a spiritual journey. And it seemed kind of predestined. Like it might sound silly, but there were synchronicities that would happen. Like I gotten a book from a store called Banyan Books, one of the mystical stores, about goddess consciousness and divine feminine energy. And in that book, it said, if you ask the goddess for something specific, not just, send me a sign, but ask for something specific, when that happens, you'll know that she's answering you. And so one night before going to work, just at a retail store, I asked for a yellow flower, thinking, okay, if I see a yellow flower tomorrow, that'll be a sign. And when I got off the bus to go to work, a homeless man approached me with a dozen yellow roses and just handed me the bouquet and said, here, these are for you. And so I really felt like the mundane world, like bills and rent and television shows, it was all kind of less important than the higher spiritual reality. And I would see people, trying on clothes and getting annoyed about their physical appearances. And I really felt like I needed to get out of that and into something more pure, and something that would be more beneficial to other people too. Like, hey, if everybody knew this, I thought of it like a cosmic secret. Like, if everybody knew you can just ask for a sign and it'll be given, how much better of a place will this world be? So it was in 2009 when I started really feeling like I wanted a guru, not just to lead myself on this journey where maybe I'm going the right way, maybe I'm going the wrong way. And I had a lot of friends introduce me to other teachers who just didn't really resonate. One of my friends from art school, she would go to a weekly meditation in the home of a lady in Vancouver who was called Jaya. And, I went for one of those meditations, but it didn't really feel right. Like it didn't feel as deep as when I would meditate by myself. One of my coworkers introduced me to a Buddhist teacher. I would maybe say pseudo-Buddhist, who was called Dr. Shah. And he would charge like $500 USD, and then he'd give you enlightenment online. And I just didn't believe that was possible. And I did everything from, going to a Sufi twirly night to seeing a Rinpoche when he visited town. And then one day when I was really intensely praying for the right teacher, I had what felt like a satori on a city bus on my way home from work, where I inwardly heard the words, "This is Babaji answering your prayer." And I'd been praying to Mahavatar Babaji, as we do when we're kind of getting into that path and discovering Yogananda. And just at that time, when I looked out the window, I saw a picture of what appeared to be, a compassionate faced young Swami smiling. And the sign said, "Kalpataru, don't miss it." And I just, even though I was only halfway home, I just pulled the bell, jumped off the bus, ran to that center. Synchronistically, they were just starting a free meditation for the evening. And the lady who opened the door for me said, "You're here for a reason. Swamiji has called you. Come in." That was in September of 2009. And I went in fully open. Like I think because I was already looking for a spiritual teacher, I didn't have my guard up. And so when people there were gushing about how awesome their experiences in India were and how he's like the youngest living enlightened master on the planet, everything they said about him just sounded so great. And when I got home that night, I Googled him, and there was nothing negative. He was recognized by all kinds of other spiritual leaders in India as being the real deal. Yeah, Modi was one of his disciples back then. There were tons of pictures of Modi holding up his book, Living Enlightenment, kind of praising it. And politicians from California, like he had been given the key to the town of, I think, Milpitas, California. So he seemed super legit. And that's when I started really saving up to get to India to meet him. And my first experience in India seemed fairly, I don't want to say disappointing. It wasn't what I expected. You know, we paid 8,000 US dollars for a program, and we slept in a dorm that looked like an army bunker, you know, and it was
How many people?
blazingly hot, but without air. At that program, for the 3-month program I was in, I think there were 90 of us. And then for a 3-week program that took place simultaneously in the middle of that, there were about 500.
Wow.
And
it's $8,000 for 3 months?
For 3 months, it was 8,000. And
That's not
for
so
the
bad.
3-week program, it was 6,000. Yeah.
Wow.
6,000 for those people, you know,
Wow.
need a lot more. And keep in mind, this was back in 2009. So now his 31-day December programs are 16,000 US dollars. 16,000.
Oh my God. Even if 3 people go, that's so much money.
People go, you could live off that for a decade in India.
Yes.
You know? And the price was always justified to us. We were always told, you know, if you were staying in a 5-star resort, this is how much money you'd pay for a week. And so with our Western logic, we would justify it and think, well, that's true. Because if you have a restaurant meal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's like $200 a day at a nice place. It's only in retrospect that I kind of crunched the numbers and figured, okay, we weren't eating restaurant meals 5 times a day. We were eating white rice and sambar, and the ingredients were donated to him by farmers who were his disciples, so that wasn't being paid for. But like I said, everything that happened, from the uncomfortable, cramped living conditions to the lack of nutrient diversity in the food, it was always justified. We were told that we're awakening our body's yogic power to create its own nutrients, and that's why we aren't given fruits and vegetables. We were told that we need to break the Western comfort patterns, and that's why there's no air conditioning.
Well, that's some of that's
and likewise
justifiable, I guess.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
I would fall for some of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say that I'm smarter than that, but I totally fell for all of it. And I think the mind is such a powerful thing.
Especially when you're looking for that.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the things I did to prepare for my trip to India was read Autobiography of a Yogi.
Like everybody.
So there's all kinds of things. Yeah, like so many of us. And, you know, Yogananda tells stories about being penniless in Vrindavan, and then whatever he needed was given to him. And I'd had enough of my own synchronous experiences to know that that's true. It happens. Mm-hmm. And so I was all for manifesting this yogic physiology and eventually living on air, you know, being a nirahara, someone who lives on pure life force energy.
Do you think that's possible?
Great. Yes, I do. I still think it's possible. But I don't think it's something that you can pay for.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's possible if your life is a constant stress. Like, basically, long story short, I was a true believer. Like, I paid for another program in 2015 that was a $6,000 3-week program. And my mom came with me. Like, she had retired the year before. She was always curious about this Swami that her daughter was following. So she also attended that. It was called Inner Awakening in Varanasi. And, you know, before that, I had started a YouTube channel where I would talk about his meditations and talk about what it was like being in his presence in India. It was the kind of thing where when he'd walk into the room, I would feel an energy. And a lot of people describe that. And of course, I kind of like to give the analogy that, like, we all have the sense of smell, right? So if you go into a garden, we smell flowers. If you walk past the sewage, it'll smell stinky. Mm-hmm. When it comes to feeling energy, we don't know how to differentiate between a sweet smell and a stench. So if we suddenly feel like our body is shaking or there's something electric in the air, we assume it's a positive energy. We don't know that it could be something negative. So now I kind of think I've heard all kinds of witnesses from India have said that they've seen him pay for black magic rituals to be done in Kerala to raise his energy and to catch seekers and kind of make them into his slaves. And I don't know whether it's real or not because I don't have experience in that myself, but I wouldn't put it past him, to
Yeah.
do something dark.
Well, not only is that not unheard of if you get real deep into just spiritual traditions in India. I mean, the Agori do these kind of things, and just I was in Peru during quarantine, and they do the same thing. There's like what they call brujos, which is like a sort of dark shaman, and they do the same thing. They'll go do this dark magic, and they'll extract energy from people, or they'll give themselves some kind of seductive energy, so it attracts people to them, and then they'll use that to exploit people, whatever they want. Financial gain, lusty stuff. Happens all the time, and that's really common in Peru. So I know that stuff is possible.
Yeah. And I mean the two, I don't want to say benefits, but the two reasons you mentioned that people would do that, lust or greed, like financial gain. I know for a fact that is what inspires this fraud who calls himself Nityananda.
Yeah.
He is incredibly lustful for gold and for power and
He
for
sits on a
name
golden
and
throne.
fame and for he sits on a golden throne, dripping in gold head to toe. At any given time, he's got a ring on each finger made of gold and diamonds. He's got like 5 or 6 heavy gold necklaces. He claims that as an incarnation of Shiva, his only adornment should be the Rudraksha, but he'll only wear the really rare Rudrakshas, the Gauri Shankar that has like 2 in 1, or like the 8 Mukhi or the 24 Mukhi. And he doesn't wear them as they are. He has them dipped in 24 karat gold before wearing them. And like any actual Hindu scripture I've ever looked at describes an enlightened being as somebody who goes beyond that desire for material possessions, who doesn't care whether they're praised or shunned because they're so established in their own truth that other people's opinions don't matter. But I mean, this man had teams. And when I say teams of people, I mean like 200 people at a time would get called to the courtyard where he had his residence. And he would start yelling and screaming at us that some journalist in Tamil Nadu had published an article calling him a fraud. And then he would say in Tamil, like, akraman, which means attack. And we would all be told, like, to basically descend like a plague on this poor, unsuspecting journalist's Facebook account, Twitter account, YouTube channel, published article on whatever magazine, and just flood the comment section with BS about him, saying he's having an affair on his wife, he's cheating, he's sleeping with prostitutes, he beats his kids. And at the time, of course, it was a red flag, but it took a few years of being around him before I started getting called for those kinds of things. Like I said, back in 2009, when I found him, he seemed to be like India's star guru. Like nobody was saying anything bad about him.
How was your mom's experience with him?
She enjoyed it, to be honest. She was only ever a program participant, so she was never living as a renunciant the way I was. So she wouldn't have been called things like, attack this journalist who said something against him. So she only ever experienced, for example, the program she attended, the accommodation wasn't in the ashram. It was in off-site kind of fancy hotels, 3 and 4-star hotels. So at least they had some level of Western comfort. And when people would attend those higher priced paid programs, the food was catered. So she wasn't living on rice and sambar like his Adinavasis, which is the word for the people who lived residentially with him. But since I've told her about other things that happened there, she's totally out of it now. Like, she threw away all of his books and all of the puja items from him, all of his pictures. And I think it's a natural reaction that a lot of us really kind of fell in love with the image he portrayed of himself on stage. You know, he speaks, I mean, this is arguable. Some people think he sounds like a clown, but to me, he always sounded very eloquent when he spoke. He had a way of describing the scriptures and bringing them to life and making you feel like it's not some distant past where, 20,000 years ago, enlightened rishis sat under banyan trees and experienced the cosmos. He made it something that sounded like it's available to each of us in any moment. And I still believe it is. But I don't think you need a middleman telling you what to do in order to achieve it anymore. I think that's shifted a lot.
Yeah, I think that's shifted too. Me and JR talk about this a lot because we kind of went through a similar experience. Not quite as in depth as your experience, but yeah, we found a spiritual teacher. I mean, we kind of really are coming from the Ram Dass lineage, and I mean, like the Neem Karoli Baba story is like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's super romanticized to us, So like when we were going to India, we were so romanticizing the idea of finding a guru and this guy that lives in the jungle and he's lived in a cave. So we were like, oh, like, like we're doing this, we're playing out this crazy story of, the same kind of thing that attracted you, I'm sure, and everyone that attracts all of us Westerners to that kind of thing. And yeah, ultimately, a couple years after hanging out with him, we kind of find out it's not as legit as we thought it was. And our sort of realization is that like the satsang is the real guru, because the moments of us looking back, it's like, oh man, those moments were so great when we were all together and we were all meditating together. And I think that's what it is these days, is that it's the satsang. And it's like, I think of it in almost in terms of also like, I always ask myself, like, where are the Martin Luther Kings that are coming out of like all this social stuff that's happening? Like, where are the leaders that are like, are popping out? Where are our social gurus? And I think now with the internet, it's like the collective is that person now. Like we are all, it's like the satsang is now the guru.
Yeah.
And that's something that we took out of sort of our experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, okay. So you spent 3 years there?
Well, I first went in 2009 and then went back off and on for 9 years.
9 years,
but,
jeez.
Yeah,
and during the 9 years, like when there was no moments in between, like when you really decided to stop big? Would you call it a cult, right? Would you call yourself like an ex-cult member? I don't want to say that offensively because I know it's kind of...
Yeah. No, it's... I definitely call it cult, and would call myself somebody who's been deprogrammed from cult brainwashing. Yeah.
So this has happened within the last few years when you started like deprogramming yourself, but before that, was there any moments where you're like, just where you question it, like, what am I doing here? Or like, this is a little weird, or...
There were, but it was never a question of he's fake, he's a fraud. It was more a question of, why can't I fulfill his expectations and be the disciple he wants me to do so I can manifest a pleasant experience here? It's kind of hard to describe if you've never been really in a highly manipulative relationship with somebody who you see as the ultimate, but who only sees you as a means to an end. Like every person who was his devotee, I can say this, I think I speak for all of us who were his followers when I say that we all believed he was an incarnation and that he was the ultimate embodiment of Shiva on planet Earth, and that he would fulfill for us what we had been seeking for lifetimes. That was something that it was never even questioned. We just accepted.
Do you remember when I snuck into the Bangalore ashram and one of the sannyasis was like, he is Shiva
Yep.
Like without a question. So I was like, so it seems like everyone here like believes he's actually an incarnation of Shiva, and then Sannyasi in the background, like, yes, he is.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that guy you spoke to, his name in the cult is Atmapriya. And I don't know what his name was before he joined, but I know he was a doctor. Like he wasn't just like some crazy kid off the street who they picked up and brainwashed. Like that's the other funny thing about this cult leader is that he has attracted all kinds of people from, credible backgrounds, teachers and lawyers and doctors and school principals and, you know, Silicon Valley, he's got somebody who's very high up in Facebook following him. And I think that's how he manages to keep all of his online accounts running despite all the reports against him. But yeah, I remember that. And I remember watching your video and thinking like, oh shit, like this poor guy is probably going to get beaten for this. Not meaning you, but meaning
The
guy
sannyasi. Oh, right.
Yeah,
yeah.
His job at the front gate was to not let anybody in unless they had approval from the fraud cult leader to be there. So I mean, you guys did it perfectly by saying that you just wanted to come in and see what you could and that you won't go in too far. But a couple of
I told them I watched
that,
Dritta's videos. That's what inspired me to come.
Yeah, and that was smart. The fact that you had a hidden camera would have gotten.
Well, it actually wasn't hidden. It was actually huge and around my neck. It was very obvious. If you can see this camera here, you see this one?
Oh yeah, I see it.
That's what was around my neck, so it was pretty big and obvious.
Well, then in that case, Atmapriya has no excuse. He should have known better. But no, joking aside,
I did feel bad.
I felt really, yeah. I mean, I know it wasn't your intention to get anybody in trouble, but having lived in that place, I know that even if you do something with the right intention, if it doesn't get the result that guru wants, you would get punished for it. And punishment can be anything from getting yelled at. For example, there was a time, the last time I was there for a December program, it was called Mahasadashivoham. And the cost for the program was $16,000 per person. And the fraud had decided that it was up to me to make sure that there were 10,000 participants there. And he said that
Jesus.
because I have 50,000 YouTube subscribers, if I could inspire just 1 in 5 to come to that program, that's 10,000 people. And he said to me about a month before, I know, right? I can't even get 1 in 5 people to click the ads. So like, how am I supposed to get 1 in 5 people to pay 16 grand? But he told me beforehand, if I don't get 10,000 people there, it's because I'm not holding a large enough spiritual space of possibility, that I'm holding on to impossibility patterns and incompletions and all kinds of other Scientology sounding new agey rhetoric that he picked up from Landmark.
He praises L. Ron Hubbard, right?
Oh yeah, he calls L. Ron Hubbard an incarnated rishi, and said that he's an enlightened master from the Vedic past who came back to lead modern humanity. Yeah, he loves L. Ron Hubbard. He has the whole book collection. But it was kind of like, I mean, you had asked if there were any moments when I questioned it. So one of the moments when I questioned it was 3 days before that December program. We had 1,100 people who had fully paid that 16 grand each. So I mean,
and is it mostly Western people, or how many Indians are here?
It's about 60% Indian, 40% Western.
And Indians are paying the same fee?
Yeah. As far as I know, I think Indians who are residentially living in India get like $1,000 discount or something. But those who are NRI Indians, the majority, I would say 99% of his inner circle are NRI. So non-resident Indians, they're people of Indian origin who are living in mostly the United States, some Australia, some Canada, some England, other countries where, you know, they've earned a huge wealth. And he markets himself as a guru who can reconnect them to their Vedic roots and their Agama roots. And so that he tells them that when they attend his programs, he will keep the spirit of Bharat, or like the spirit of India, alive in their lineage. And I mean, he's even said some fairly racist things against everyone who's not Indian, which is that people with an Indian physiology and Indian DNA have an easier chance of getting enlightened than anybody else, and that they're genetically more yogic than anybody else, and that they're more intelligent than anybody else. He said there's like a 10-point IQ difference between Indian people and everybody else. So he really markets himself to Indian people. And what's funny is, like, he would always tell us that he took birth in India because it's the spiritual hub of the planet, and it's like the exact word he used was a spiritual incubator, because so many enlightened beings, from Mahavira to Buddha to Adi Shankaracharya, he said they've all graced that land with their footprints. And so of all the countries in the world, he would never live anywhere but India. Yet the moment his rape trial was taken to court, he fled India and absconded. Like, nobody knows to this day where he physically is. There's an Interpol notice out for his arrest and for him to be extradited back to India. And he seems to be really laughing in the face of the judicial system.
Yeah, still uploading videos.
He still sits on his, every day. And you know, the first time I really questioned, is this the life I want? Or am I just here because I feel obligated to follow him? It was 3 days before that December program when he called 3 of us to his throne. He had a throne set up outside, kind of where participants would be arriving the next couple of days. He called Nithyananda Swami, who was the head of his programs department, you know, making all the hotel arrangements. He called a lady named Mahayoga, who was the one who would mainly sit on stage as a teacher, leading people in all the third eye meditations and all the, you know, siddhis. He would call them shaktis, but he wanted everyone to develop yogic powers. And she was the one he kind of put in charge of that. And he called me, who at that time was the head of his social media department. And he yelled and yelled and yelled at us. He told Nyanatma that after basically living for 10 years as his sannyasi, she was a complete failure, and she was proof that even living in the breathing space of an incarnation isn't enough for people if they're too stubborn to catch the enlightenment. Like, he just tore a strip off of her. And I was kind of sliding back in my seat thinking, like, this can't be good. Like, I'll be next, or Mahayoga will be next, and then me. But then he called Mahayoga and gave her a big hug and praised her and said she's the only one fulfilling his guru vak, which means like his demands on her, his instructions. And then he turned to me, and I swear he growled. He went like, "Urgh." Like he made this face like a mad dog, and said, "You're a third-rate bloody dog. You should just be dead. You have no use to me." He told me that my life was a crime against humanity, that I had the possibility to bring 10,000 people to realize enlightenment, but I failed, and therefore I failed the world. And that if I couldn't inspire 10,000 of my YouTube viewers to be at his feet, then I don't care about people, then I don't care about their enlightenment. I don't have any personal connection with them. He had like an iPad with him where he opened my YouTube channel and showed one video that it had something like 500,000 views and maybe like 1,000 comments. And he said, tell me all the legal names of all these people. He would point to somebody's like screen name and avatar and said like, where does this person live? What's their name? Do they have kids? And of course I said, I don't know. And he said, that means I don't care about people. And I mean, do you know the legal names of all of your subscribers? Like, do you know where
Probably not even
you've
5.
got more than so no, not even 5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's strange. So it seems like he clearly understands psychology and how to manipulate people. So it seems intentional.
Yeah. I would say definitely it was. Because he never made me think, I don't like him, I want him to change.
And that's December 2018, right?
That was December of 2017. Yeah, 17 going into 18. The program started, I think, December 10th and ended early January, maybe January 10th.
Okay, so let's back up to like his first big kind of controversy. That was with that one actress. That was the big one, right?
Yeah, that was the big one. Yeah.
And what was that like in the ashram? Did that really shake stuff up inside the ashram when that happened?
I wasn't in the ashram when that happened. I was actually traveling in India with a couple of friends who I had met in the program. But from what I've heard, a lot of people left when that video was leaked. And the people who left were, for example, a lady named Mama Nisha, who had been one of the main teachers for our 3-month program. We considered her like the top person there because she was the one on stage who introduced him and the one who she led our classes, and it was her signature on our little certificates when we became yoga teachers. So when she left, that was kind of something that shook us up, thinking if it was a lie, she would be standing with him and saying it's not true. But nobody ever spoke of the people who left. It was a lot like Scientology. Like if you've ever seen Leah Remini's show, Scientology in the Aftermath, how she says that the moment somebody says something against L. Ron Hubbard, or the moment somebody calls the cult or leaves, everyone else has to disconnect from them, like they're dead to you. That's kind of what happened when Ranjita's video got leaked. Anybody who questioned what if it's real got kicked out. Anybody who just believed it was real left of their own free will.
And just some context, Ranjita was a famous actress, and someone in the ashram must have snuck a hidden camera into the room of Nityananda and filmed those two getting freaky with each other.
The backstory behind that is Nityananda at that point in time, I'm sorry, I call him now usually Nithyananda with an M, because Nitya means eternal and Mithya means temporary. So Nityananda means like the eternal bliss of enlightenment. I think he's Nithyananda. He's like that temporary pleasure of money, sex, food. So I like to call him
sometimes I've seen people call him Shityananda.
Yeah, Shityananda is another good one.
I've seen it.
But I like to be, yeah, some just call him Poops. I personally think it's a bigger burn to just call him something that he would understand, like Nityananda, because that's what fight the most, that he's not that. But
who snuck the camera in there?
What was that? Oh, right. The backstory behind that is that he was involved in a relationship with a beautiful young woman named Aarti Rao. And he had told her that she is his Parvati, like that he's Shiva and she's Devi and she's his wife and she's his beloved, and that
didn't he say that to you also?
Nobody else is allowed to relate to years later. Yeah. I think it's kind of like they know how to keep their victim quiet and feeling blessed. Like, wow, this is my secret with God. And yeah, but Aarti Rao at that point in time really believed she was the only one and that it was a spiritual union, not a physical union. However, Nithyananda's driver, a guy named Lenin Karupan, had witnessed him involved with other beautiful young women. And at that point, Lenin was getting disillusioned and ready to drop out and leave. But he wanted her to kind of wake up from that brainwashing and get out too. So he told her, it's not just you. He's doing this with other women. He's not your Shiva. It's not a divine couple. He's using this to scam on all kinds of different girls. And guys too, for that matter. He was an equal opportunist predator. Like he would go after men and women both. And Arti didn't believe it. She didn't believe that her Shiva could be messing around with other women. And she planted that camera in his bedroom because she had access to his room. She was in there cleaning every day, taking care of him, feeding him, massaging him, being sexual with him. So when she had a chance, she snuck in that camera. And from what I gather after, like I've watched hours of her interviews, in one of them, she really teared up, and it seemed to me like she was going to prove Lenin wrong. She was going to show him the footage and say, see, he's innocent. There's nothing shady going on behind the scenes. He's Shiva. He's a good guy. And when she went through that footage and saw him, getting a blowjob from Ranjita, reaching up Ranjita's sari, having sex with Ranjita, when she saw all of that going on, it was heartbreaking for her because he was the spiritual leader that she believed would give him enlightenment, but she also left her husband for him. She also had an abortion by his instruction and did everything he told her to do. So I think at that point she had been there for 5 years, and it was like a crushing blow. She ruined her life to become his devotee and his volunteer, and in return, he's a total fraud. He's sleeping with other women. And I think it was Lenin who had the possession of that video and who gave it to Sun TV. What we were all told is that Lenin and Arti were both anti-Hindu elements. That's the line they fed us. And that they had infiltrated the organization with the sole purpose of destroying it. And that, they planted a hidden camera, but then they morphed the footage. What we were told is that Ranjita had gone into his room to feed him, to clean, and that they took those images and morphed them into something sexual, like a deep fake.
And it's very obvious. It's a very obvious video. Like
it's
someone that can edit that
real.
would be like Marvel, hired for Marvel.
Yeah.
But they did hire someone to edit things out. That they did an amazing job at that.
Yeah. The cult itself edited. Yeah, they hired people to edit the footage. And then their edited footage is what they sent to some Hollywood expert to analyze it. And he said, this is edited. It's not original. And of course it was edited because it was the cult's version that they edited. Right. So they go on record quoting this guy all the time, saying, he's a top Hollywood film engineer and he proved the video was fake. But he's not a forensic scientist and he wasn't given the original. And, even in his testimony, he says, I've never seen the original footage. I only have the copy given to me by Nithyananda's representatives. So it's just silly the way they try to refute it. But when you're in an environment where the information given to you is completely controlled and you have the confirmation
North
bias,
Korea
where
style.
The only people you discuss it with, North Korea style, exactly. We're only shown what he wants us to see. And we're told if you watch the footage on Indian news, it's evil. It's going to pollute your mind. It's going to take away your possibility of enlightenment. It could destroy your future. And so we were legit, we were scared to watch those things. So we didn't watch them. And because we'd each had our own personal experiences where we felt his energy, or, you know, one of his teachings in his book was beneficial in our lives, we chose to believe his side of the story. And what's really sad is the way they really destroyed Arti Rao's life. She was a US resident at the time. And right after she filed a rape case in India against him, of course, she was of legal age, and it seemed as if it was a consensual relationship. However, there's a law that when you're a dependent on somebody, there's like any sexual encounter, if you feel that that person is your authority, it becomes like a statutory rape, as if you're a minor and they're a major. So because he was her guru and she was surrendered to him and she lived in his campus and she wore his mala around her neck, she was his dependent for all intents and purposes. So she filed a rape case. And of course, it was also mind control and lies. Like, he told her that he's an incarnation and that so is she. So that's why she went along with it. If he had told her, you know, I'm trying to get rich by scamming Westerners, you're pretty hot, let's do it, she wouldn't have. You know, the only reason she went along with it is that he said, I'm Lord Shiva, you're my Parvati. But the moment she filed her rape charge against him, his American disciples started taking out lawsuits against her. One lawsuit, they claimed that she stole yogic teachings from his organization and that she was making money off of that stolen information. And then simultaneously, literally, I don't know how they got away with this, but she was also charged for the same thing. Oh, sorry, for defamation of character, for the interview she had given about him. She was charged with that in another court, in another city on the same day. So she couldn't appear at both trials simultaneously, and not appearing in court was a forfeit. So she lost those cases. And in total, the cult has charged her with something like 500,000 US dollars in damages. And she had to leave America because of that. She had to go back to India. And it's been something like 10 years now. We're in 2020. She filed her rape case in 2010. It's still in trial. And so somebody is getting bribed somewhere.
Also, I mean, obviously,
know
because
that for
Nityananda left the country, so someone somewhere, that's not an easy thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
Even in India, that's not an easy thing to do.
No. But he has devotees who are
Yeah, absolutely. And he's a
multimillionaires.
multimillionaire himself.
Oh God, yeah. Somebody added up the total amount paid for every program he's conducted since 2008, when he had his first $6,000 program. It's over 1 billion US dollars that his organization has accumulated.
How much have you paid him?
He also, oh God, I'm bad at math. 8,000 plus 6,000 plus 11,000. So
14, 25,000?
Yeah. $8,000 in 2009 for a program called LBE, $6,000 in 2015 for Inner Awakening, and $11,000 in 2016 for a program called Sadashivoham. And after, like, here's the kind of psychological manipulation I was under. In 2016, I asked for his blessings to be able to get the payment for the December program. I didn't know how I'd get the money, so I sold my business. I had an Etsy jewelry shop that I've since rebuilt, but I sold it for $11,000 so that I'd be able to pay for that program. And the day after I transferred the funds and made the payment, he sent me a Facebook inbox message saying, "Oh, my Shakti, oh, my sweetie, you didn't need to pay. I would have given you this program for free." And then I asked him, then why did you give blessings when I asked to be able to manifest the money? And he said, because you needed to get rid of your plan B. He told me that my Etsy shop, like having a business established in the outside world, was a barrier between him and me. And that once I sold it and got rid of it, I was fully his. And so, yeah, he likes to strip people of. Yeah.
It's interesting because, like, for a lot of people, I think a lot of people fall for these things naturally in life and might not see it expressed because it's not kind of eccentric in a way if you're going to India and meeting a guru. But I think we fall into these kind of patterns. Let me try to think of one. I don't know, but we are all human beings are naturally inclined to fall into patterns of community, and we can easily get sucked into that. And so I know, because it seems crazy to a lot of people to be like, how could you believe this guy is Shiva, or this guy is like telling you to sell your business? But it's like, I mean, people definitely do this stuff with church all the time. So that's a normal expression of giving your money to someone. But it feels like a part of a spiritual practice to sacrifice these things, or like you can really justify it as a sadhana to give it's like a lesson in detachment almost, to give these things away. And then to have someone you trust as being a spiritual teacher to be reinforcing this idea, you're just like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Just to kind of help people understand how it's easy to fall into this.
Yeah. He told us that in history, when a disciple was seeking a guru, they would have to go to the Himalayas and climb the highest peaks in search of that enlightened one. And he said in those days, the person's greatest attachment was their home and their family. So climbing into the Himalayas and possibly sacrificing their family connections and their community, that was the greatest sacrifice. But that in this day and age, a person's biggest attachment is their money. And so paying a hefty price is the equivalent of sacrificing that thing that they're holding on to for security. And that's what he'd say. He said, if I was here 10,000 years ago, I'd be sitting on top of Kailash, and only those who were willing to climb to reach me could reach me. But today, instead of climbing that mountain, your tapas to the
so
guru
convenient
is giving this money. Very convenient. Yeah, he was a crafty one. I really think he's very highly intelligent.
Of course.
Highly manipulative. And I also feel that he's done everything in such a cunning, convincing way that there are still people who have seen my videos where I've spoken about my personal sexual abuse by him, who think I'm lying.
It's just so
because
funny.
They can't imagine there being.
He's in like a giant castle on a throne, and he's just like, I can control the sun. I can make monkeys and cows speak Tamil. And people are just like, Bhagwan. No. I do feel bad for people, but it's just like, what did you think when you heard him saying he was controlling the sun and making it delay, and he's going to make cows and monkeys talk? Like that, for me, that would be like, okay, this is a total red flag. This is just becoming a circus at this point.
Well, I had already left at the point when he said he would make cows and monkeys talk. So I was able to laugh with everybody else because I was.
If he did it, though, if he could figure that out, that would be great.
Yeah, if he could do that.
I wouldn't have.
Yeah, I would have.
He said he was going to make them grow organs, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. He said there are specific organs, and it's only my guess that what he meant was like vocal cords. Yeah. But he said that the human anatomy has organs that make speech possible, and that animals don't have that, but he would give it to them. He would have 10,000 parrots giving people Akashic records readings, because he would teach them to say things that were their choice instead of just repeating words that people taught them. So he made all kinds of claims. It wasn't just the cows and monkeys will speak Tamil. He also said, parrots will give Akashic readings. And he said when people would enter his ashram, instead of paying a certain price for a hotel room, they would walk up to the counter and the money would already be taken out of their bank account into his ashram account magically. And that he said somebody might come to the auditorium and say, I'd like to book 7 nights. And the sannyasi who meets them at the counter will say, no, Aya, you only want to be here for 3 nights because on the 4th night, you're going to get called home for an emergency with your daughter. Like he was saying, we would be so psychic that we would know how long somebody's stay is going to be, even if it's, against their plan.
And did you ever experience anything where you were like, hold on, maybe there is something kind of supernatural or some kind of cities that we are all kind of experiencing? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really like to talk about it much because I think there's such a huge social skepticism about anything beyond the physical plane. Some people would hear it and think like, oh, damn, that girl is still brain, or she's still crazy. But, in the spirit of honesty, when he would have me sit on stage with the Gurukul kids to do remote viewing and body scanning, there were times that I said things that I couldn't have possibly known that were surprisingly accurate. And I kind of
Can you give an example?
to,
like how specific?
Yeah, I can give an example. I can give a few examples, like for body scanning, where we look at a person and talk about their medical condition. A man once sat in front of me, and when I looked at him, I could see, through the jeans he was wearing, that he had varicose veins on the backs of his knees. And I could also see that, like, under the 2 layers of clothes he was wearing, that he had a hidden pendant with his Vedic astrology symbol and the black
This is
stone.
intuitively?
So I told him,
or you're actually saying this?
Yeah, intuitively. I never really had a physical inner vision. It was more like a claircognizance. Right. I just knew things. And he confirmed that yes, he had been sitting in Padmasana as a pujari since he was a little kid, and that there were veins sticking out on the backs of his legs. And he actually just reached into his shirt and pulled out this little charm that was a black stone, which was his Vedic astrology stone.
Yeah.
That's not something I could just guess. Right. I don't assume most people have varicose veins or wear that black stone. It could have been 1 out of 9 stones.
Yeah.
I knew it was a black.
And I do think we have experiences like this throughout life. I mean, there's almost every person, despite being into Hinduism or being into any kind of spiritual stuff, we all have experiences where we'll be thinking of someone and then within a second they're calling. Or you can just look at someone and you can be like, you just kind of intuitively know who they are just by kind of watching them for a second. And you just kind of like, oh, maybe that guy, I can tell this person has got like been through some stuff or something like that. And you'll be right. So, I mean, there are times when we have these experiences naturally throughout life. And a lot of the time we don't have a cultural map to sort of understand these experiences, so we just kind of write them off as coincidence or something like that. I forgot who it was. Someone once said coincidence is like a lack of proper science or something, meaning we're just missing something somewhere along the line. Coincidences, no accidents in the universe.
Yeah. Exactly. I think even Einstein once said that intuition is worth more than intelligence. So it's not inconceivable for people to have things like this happen. And like, I should mention that before I found him, I had been working professionally as a tarot card reader in Vancouver. And this kind of thing used to happen to me all the time in the tarot room when I had clients come in. I remember once, for example, a mother and daughter came up to my tarot room door, and I just knew that the girl's grandmother, the woman's mother, had passed away, and that they were there because they wanted to make contact with her. And it's the kind of thing that I wasn't one of those TV psychics who would say, did you have a loved one? Did you recently lose somebody? I just straight away said, you're here because you want to make contact with the matriarch of your family who recently passed away. And they both just started to cry. And then I inwardly heard that they had bought this lady a box of chocolates for her birthday, but she had died before they could give her those chocolates. And that when they had gone out to make funeral arrangements, the dog had kind of pulled them down from the kitchen and ate them. And I heard like the grandmother was saying, tell them thank you for the chocolates. I enjoyed them even though the dog ate them. And that's a pretty specific thing. That's not just like, oh, I see she loved you very much. Like I told them that. I said, okay, this might sound strange, but I hear your grandmother is saying thank you for the chocolates. She enjoyed them even though the dog ate them. And they laughed and they showed me pictures on their cell phone of this box of chocolates they had bought for the grandmother slash mother and the dog eating them. And of course, I also said, I hope you rushed him to the vet because like that's highly toxic for a dog. But if that kind of experience only happened to me after entering the Nityananda cult, I'm sure I'd still be there because I would have believed he gave me that power, that it was through his initiation that this thing happened. Because I'd had my own kind of psychic moments in my life before going, I really feel everybody has this. It's just a matter of whether you listen to it or not, whether you do it or not. It wasn't his power.
Yeah, I
But
think a lot of it is the power of the pilgrimage of going to India and really being sincere in your seeking. And I mean, what human beings have a problem with is attaching to a symbol as far as like, I mean, you thinking you need something, that enlightenment is on a mountaintop or something.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that there's a quote where it's like, the only Zen you'll find on a mountaintop is the Zen you brought with you. But
Wow, that's
we have this problem with attaching to symbols as a way to kind of help us tune into something. So I think like Nityananda, he acted as an important symbol to like help bring these things out of people, because I see a lot of people say like they are having powerful experiences being there, but I think it's coming from their sincerity and seeking out a powerful experience.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
In fact, just last night I had a
and he's just taking
conversation with a
credit
lady.
for it.
Yeah, he's not only taking credit for it, he's telling them flat out, I'm giving you this Shakti. When you manifest it, you'll know it's from me. He'll tell them chant his name to awaken it. And so when they chant his name and start practicing, which they've never practiced before, when it happens, they really do believe it's from him.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. It was actually a lady from Peru who first initiated all the kids in his Gurukul school into the blindfold reading. And that's something that they kind of bury and try to make people conveniently forget, and they don't tell the newcomers. But he's not the only teacher in the world initiating people into this or awakening this in people. And I think you nailed it when you said he's the symbol that people attribute it to. He's not the origin of that power. They had it within them all along. He's like the Wizard of Oz. He's behind his curtain proclaiming this is coming from me, but if they peek behind the curtain, they'll see it's just a dude saying something, and that they're the ones who awakened it through their tapas and their sincerity and their dedication to doing the rituals. Like earlier you mentioned Drita, that you got into the ashram by saying that you watched his videos. I think he's the perfect example of somebody who sincerely was seeking enlightenment and who was willing to make the sacrifice. Like he could be a star hockey player right now, but he gave up his hockey career in order to move to India and become a full-time disciple of this fraud. And because he had such powerful experiences that he attributes to that guru, he believes that the guru can do no wrong and that anything the guru tells him must be the right thing to do. And so, he'll shit talk those of us who left and make up horrendous false accusations against us.
Yes.
I don't think it's because he's a bad guy. I think it's because he is so mind controlled right now that
Absolutely.
he believes that, he thinks committing a crime against somebody else is for the greater good because that person is a toxic detractor from enlightenment.
And he's got he's got a video pattern catalog of him sort of, acting out this behavior, like him cussing in Tamil with their weird little hand motions they were doing.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, that's a pretty.
I don't know the words, but
God.
gestures, yeah.
that's a perfect example of him. And I
Yeah.
do feel like he is sincere. I feel like him and his girlfriend are both sincere. I've watched both of their videos, and I mean they're clearly sincere. You don't just give up your life and take that on for no if you're not sincere. But yeah, I definitely think that they're off. Or I don't know about his girlfriend so much, but he's off the deep end as far as you can go. He's Manson family to me.
Yeah, he is. He is. I would be scared. I would be scared if I lived in the same city as him. You know, I wouldn't.
I
Um,
I think like maybe he would kill me. I could see him trying to kill me in my sleep.
I could see him kill me. I have thought about it. That if you know, what would I do if I, you know, stepped out of my building one day and he was standing there,
And he's a
or
big guy.
yeah. Um, to be fair, I don't think of him as a violent person. I've never
No,
seen
me
him
neither.
lose his cool, or like I don't want to say anything
He is
because
very
hmm,
he's a very shit talker, but he doesn't get to he's very like he'll talk straight, but he'll shit talk.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I think um the moment I lost my respect for him was when I went public about the child abuse. Um,
Yeah.
the thing that kind of broke the cult spell on me is when two of the kids who had been studying in the Nityananda Gurukul cried and told me that they were scared to go back to India. At the time, we were in Toronto, given the assignment of getting him political asylum, the fraud guru. And like it was kind of a comedy of errors. I told them when Ranjita, who is like his right hand person now, she's been given the name Ma Nithyananda Mai Swami. So people kind of venerate her like a female version of him. Um, she called me one day when I was still in the Bididi ashram, and she said, "Take your cell phone to somewhere where nobody can hear you." And when I was in the stairwell of the building where I was staying, she said, "Book a flight to Toronto as soon as possible. Do whatever it takes. Get a meeting with Justin Trudeau and get political asylum for Swamiji." And I immediately said to her, "Okay, Akka," because we all called her like big sister. I said, "If
Hmm.
you really want to meet with Prime Minister Trudeau, you should send me to Ottawa, not Toronto. Toronto is not Canada's capital. Like he lives in Ottawa. The parliament is in Ottawa. I can make any connection needed only if I'm in Ottawa." And she said, "No, Ma. There are devotees with homes in Toronto where you can stay. We don't have anybody in Ottawa, so do it from Toronto." And it's just they did all kinds of stupid things like that. Like if I'm gonna do it from Toronto, I might as well just do it from India because it can
Yeah.
only be online. Um, but anyhow, I went obediently to Toronto, and two of the kids from the Gurukul were there with their chaperone, Ma Vidya. And one day those kids came downstairs to the room where I was staying, and there was another lady present named Debbie Chance, who is still fully in the cult. And they started crying, and I asked, why are you crying? Because I thought we were having a good day. I made them chocolate chip pancakes that morning, like they were super happy just a couple hours earlier. And the little girl said she's sad because she wants to stay in Toronto forever, but she's scared they'll get called back to India. And I asked why she wouldn't want to go back to India, because her mother and father were there, her little sister was there, her friends were there. And she said, "I'm scared that we'll have another incident like December 31st." And the way she said it was like she already thought that I knew what she was talking about. And I kind of like made a quick eye contact with Debbie Chance, who went like this, like she didn't know. So I asked this little girl who had just turned 13, what was the December 31st incident? And remember I told you about that program, that $16,000 Mahasada Shivoham program, where like I was called a third-rate, bloody, useless dog,
Hmm.
should be dead because I could get 10,000 people. Well, the kids in the Gurukul during that program were expected to sit in the hall with those 1,100 paid participants and entangle with them. The exact word used was entangle, and enter a space of Shaktipada, which basically means these kids were expected to transmit their spiritual powers and abilities to the program participants. But the program participants had been complaining that they're not able to see blindfolded. They can't move objects telekinetically. They can't materialize vibhuti and kumkum, which they had all been promised they'd be able to do by the end of the program. Instead of owning up to the fact that he always declared, I will give you this power, it's my initiation, it's my darshan, Nityananda yelled at the kids and told them that program participants are failing because they are not entangling properly. They're not holding a high enough space. They're failures. And so we've got kids as young as 7 years old up to the age of 17. And the entire failure of a program, like of a very high priced program, is dumped on them. And on the morning of December 31st, 2017, Maharishi Advait, who was the head of the kids' Gurukul, was instructed by Nityananda to force the kids to beat each other until they either bleed or they cry. And it was gruesome. I've had at this point 6 separate children who had attended that school confirm the story that was told to me in Toronto. Some of them have added even more details, and it's truly sickening what happened to those kids. The little
Was there any
boy-
charges against
No.
this?
Nope,
No charges.
no charges.
But-
I
But there was
reported it-
charges between like some kidnapping charges.
That came later. The kidnapping charges came from an incident in 2019.
Okay, this is kind of
beating
when I started getting involved.
Okay, yeah. For me, like when these 2 kids, one boy and one girl, when it was the girl who first told me about it, and she was crying on my lap. Like, I don't have any kids. I've never wanted to have kids or get married. Like, sannyas kind of seemed like a natural for me. But there was a certain maternal protective instinct that I felt awaken when this little girl was crying on my lap. Like, her head was on my knee. I could feel her tears, you know? And I didn't want her to have to go back to that horror, because she was saying to us she wants to stay in Toronto forever. So my mind was scrambling to process why Ma Advait did that. I was still brainwashed enough that I didn't think Swamiji, like my guru, had forced this on the kids. I just thought one of his disciples snapped one day and abused the kids. I didn't know it was his instruction to her to do it. But I looked at the little boy who was kind of rocking in the corner at a bit of a distance from us, and I asked him, did you know that this happened to all the girls in the girls' dorm? And he said, yes, Ma, not only I know it happened to the girls, but the same thing was done to the boys in the boys' dorm. And they had told me that the kids who were first given the instruction to beat their friends, they said they felt worse for those kids than the kids who got beaten, because those kids were crying and begging that they didn't want to do it. I was told the little girl who beat the girls in the girls' dorm had, at first, she would just lightly tap the other kids because she didn't want to inflict pain on them. And that Ma Advait had kind of grabbed her arm and really whacked another girl with it and told her, keep going. If they're not crying real tears, if you don't see bruises and blood, you're not beating them hard enough. And since that day, other kids who have kind of snuck away with their cell phones to talk to me, even though it's been forbidden to them, they've said that as it went on, it got even worse. One little girl, she's now 19, but she was 17 at the time of the incident. She said it was like the horrific scene at the end of Lord of the Flies. She said by the end of it, all the kids were told, beat whoever's next to you. So imagine just this bloodbath of kids beating on each other. And
they're beating them for why exactly?
For not having a strong enough spiritual space to awaken psychic powers in all of the program participants.
Is it sort of the way that monks will hit you with a stick if you're not paying attention while meditating? But just is that how they're justifying it?
No.
This is
The way
like this is meant to punish you, to make you
this was
focus harder.
what the kids said. Ma Advait said to them is that Swamiji is suffering because of your failure, and you don't have compassion for his suffering. You don't care about him enough to make the participants feel the Shaktis. The only way people as dull and as dumb and as heartless as you can feel Swamiji's pain is if you feel it physically. And that's why they were beaten. They were told that they were too insensitive to pick up on his subtle suffering, that they were causing his program to fail. So they needed to bleed and to cry physically. One of the girls who confided in me said that right after the beatings, she and another girl named Nandita had to, I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't tell this story because people will be able to figure out who she was. She shouldn't have spoken with me. But I've heard from other kids who I trust completely, who I personally knew when I was in India, that 100% what the kids in Toronto told me was true. One child had been there with Ma Advait when she got the phone call from Nityananda telling her to orchestrate these beatings. One of the boys, who has since left the organization, told me that Rishi Advait, Ma Advait's husband, had regularly beaten boys, given them black eyes, punched them, hit them, kicked them, and that Ma Advait had once broken the knuckles of her son by hitting him with her silver stick. She had a stick. I don't know if you've seen in pictures, but the fraud had given me this big, it looks like a pimp stick. It's like a silver plated lion walking stick. He had given one of those to each of the Advaits too. And apparently she had hit her son's hand so hard with that stick that his knuckles, what the kid who told me about it said, he said it sounded like a balloon popped.
Oof,
like it.
Shit.
So it's disgusting that woman has also fled India. When I first went public about all of this, the last I heard, she's in Trinidad.
And they believe
so
Nithyananda's in Ecuador?
Yeah, I've heard Ecuador, I've heard Trinidad and Tobago, I've heard Colombia. Like they've basically sent out delegations of his brainwashed disciples all over South America. Also Peru, a group had gone to Peru, including Manyanatma. So they've been basically bribing and pleading with officials wherever they can to try to get him some kind of asylum. And it's worked. I don't know which country he's in now. I know he was in Ecuador up until maybe late last year or early this year.
He's trying to start his own country.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
Kailasa, right?
Kailasa, yeah. The world's only enlightened nation is what he calls it.
With their own passports?
Yeah, their own passports that won't work anywhere.
Yeah.
He claims that they had a UN official who approved all of this, which is not true. Yeah, he's a spin doctor. Like, my biggest fear is that it's going to turn into another Jonestown. Like, if he does actually acquire an island, that's my biggest fear, is that, like, I've seen his temper tantrums. I've seen the way he'll snap at somebody seemingly unprovoked because he has
I mean, what will happen when they find him, when the police find him? Is he going to turn all the devotees and say, like, kill these police?
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah. I mean,
it's going to be like the Osho thing where everyone starts getting guns and wearing pink suits and stuff.
I was literally just going to say, like, the way it happened in Rajneeshpuram, like, Nityananda has actually ordered all of his disciples to watch Wild Wild Country and learn from Ma Sheila how to do it. So he has already told them, not that, this was a bad thing that we should avoid turning into, but, look how much she did for Osho. She was able to manifest so many Rolls Royces. She was able to buy a town. In fact,
Jesus.
Drita and Prasida, the blissful athlete and the Kundalini yogini, they were at one point given the instruction to find a small town in Canada and buy it for him and start a spiritual community there. And I know this is true. Like it was Prasida herself, back when she was still talking to me, who told me, we're going to establish a community in Canada and you should move there. You should get a boyfriend because it's only for Grihasta couples. This was after I had dropped the sannyas initiation. But yeah, you should marry somebody and move there and help us establish this community. And he's so black and white in his thinking. You can't be single and happy. You either have to be married or a sannyasi. There's no in between, which is another method he uses to control people,
That's also
because
a very Indian thing too.
Yeah,
a very like Brahmin family type.
Yeah. But yeah, he idolizes Osho. He sees Osho as the fulfillment of his fantasy of owning a town.
They're not that far away.
No, they're not.
As far as their behavior goes, I've gotten the death threats after I snuck in there. I've gotten all kinds of weird accusations that I work for the church or I'm some kind of informant or I'm like trying to infiltrate to ruin Hinduism.
Yeah.
I got all kinds of crazy accusations.
Yeah.
I know. I do feel part of a club.
Yeah. They accused me of being a CIA agent and trying
I got that one too.
Nithyananda chocolate. Wow. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, I'm no I'm no political genius, but I'm pretty sure if the CIA is investigating somebody, it's because they're terrorists. Am I wrong? Like,
very true.
Why would the CIA hire an assassin to kill him unless he's doing some shady shit behind the scenes that might spark the CIA's interest? Like, is he a threat to American Homeland Security? Why else would a CIA agent go after him?
Multiple, apparently.
Multiple, yeah. And I don't think the CIA recruits Canadian art school dropouts. Like, I don't think I'm their, their prime hire.
One of the things I love that they do to you is where they take that picture of you with the cross on the back of your wall, and they're like, she was a Hindu, but she has a cross with like question marks and like I just imagine dramatic music playing. It's like, oh,
ooh,
as if we're not like from America and Canada and we have all these,
I was born and raised Catholic. I have friends who are still Christian, who are still Catholic.
As if you can't have like a Christian symbol in your house if you're Hindu. Anyway.
Yeah. The ironic thing is I don't have any pardon my mess, but like the only religious symbols I have up in my place are Hindu symbols. I still have deities up. I still have.
I got over here. I got Shiva, Jesus. I got all kinds of stuff over there.
That's cool. Yeah.
JR, why don't you hop in and share some of your maybe some things of how you can relate to this.
Yeah, well, I was really close to a guru in India named Shamsundar Das Baba, and he was really interesting, and like I don't think he's quite the same as Nityananda. He definitely has attachments and like doesn't tell the truth to try to get what he wants, but then you can understand that he's got all these Indian devotees who, they would be pretty upset if they found out the truth about what he's done, and it would ruin his whole thing he's got going on.
Do you want to share about what he's done? I don't know how far how openly you want to talk.
Yeah, there's like a woman who I won't name who I could almost guarantee is gonna watch this and will blow up both our phones. And we
love you.
Yeah, I mean, we love her, and I've stayed at her house. And, anyways, she was like in this Shiva Shakti relationship with him, where like he's her husband and she's his wife, but she had a real husband. It's really weird. And then they try to make all that work, right? So there's a lot of drama and trying to figure that shit out because they didn't get divorced or anything. And so she's doing that in a relationship. Now that's being totally denied, by the Baba.
Which, is actually, it's all okay. If this is all consensual and whatever, is none of our business what any of these guys are doing. But the thing is that it became knowledge within the satsang, and it became sort of like, it became a discussion within the satsang. Like, okay, we found this out. Well, we need to talk about it because Baba's lying about it, and, whatever. And, yeah, I mean, so ultimately, I don't think it would be any of our business if that's not the way it came about. And the thing is that Baba completely, he wouldn't admit it to us.
Yeah.
And that's where I really felt betrayed, is because it's like, what's the big deal? If this is what you're doing, just if you would have been honest with us, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But now I feel like betrayed that on a very basic level, you can't even just like, well, it's not that, I mean.
Yeah, I think it's because in Hindu culture, the concept of being a sannyasi and being celibate, being so like pure, kind of virginal and pure, that is kind of to them a symbol of spiritual enlightenment, like somebody who is beyond sex, beyond desire, beyond attachment to other people, beyond physical pleasure. And so when somebody boasts about their celibacy and their brahmacharyam, and then you find out behind the scenes that person is secretly sexually active, it's not a matter of, how dare he have an affair with a married woman. I mean, that has its own morality to it if she's husband. But okay, say her husband knows and he's okay with it. I don't think the moral issue is about what two people do in bed. I think the moral issue is this crazy deception. Like you said, like you have a right to feel violated by that because you were lied to. And like in the case of Nityananda, he demands a strict code of celibacy among his disciples. If somebody is not married, they are not allowed to touch a member of the opposite sex. They're not allowed to have sex. They're not allowed to hold somebody's hand. You can't even hug a member of the opposite sex. I was told when I renew my visa, for example, that I'm not allowed to hug my uncles or my cousins. It's ridiculous that they preach one thing on stage and then they do something else in bed behind the scenes and make everybody believe that they're this pristine example of pure celibacy. And so other people will become celibate to please them, not knowing what they're doing. I think that's the most, sinister aspect of their sexual life. Nityananda would also brag about being ahimsa, non-violent. He would say, I don't even swat a mosquito. And yet he orders for all the kids in his Gurukul school to get beaten. I don't know if you've seen it, but I interviewed this guy from Australia he's a registered hypnotherapist and trained in psychotherapy. They didn't know that he could speak fluent Tamil when he was there in the Audinum. And he actually personally heard Nityananda ordering for an elderly couple to get beaten. And he saw it happen. He saw the male sannyasis pick up whatever random sticks they had and start beating this elderly Tamil couple. So
someone else got beat also. A young, or maybe it was an older guy or a younger guy. It was a Western guy because he had a Western name. I forget, but someone was like warning me because they were like, they beat up this guy, so you better be careful. And I did get a few threats of like, we're gonna find where you're hanging out in Bangalore. and I posted some of those threats in a video. The next thing, just kind of being like, look how ridiculous they're acting. And after that, it was almost as if, like clockwork, they all started being nice to me, as if someone had said, try like a different approach. And I was all of a sudden getting invited to the ashram. Drita was like totally like trying to befriend me. Went from totally like being a complete asshole, like you are abusing my guru, like this is a curse to the highest degree, to being like, I think we would be friends in a different context. I think you should look at it from this perspective. And they all did it. Everyone that was threatening me all like tried to become my friend, which just seems like a total
of course, they
culty
call it love
move
bombing.
too.
Like I've done tons of research about cults since getting out, and basically systematically undoing all the levels of mind control that were done to me. And I can really see the way the Nityananda cult does something called love bombing, which means when they want to recruit a new member, there's an instruction given to fill that person's inbox with friendly messages, with invitations. Tell them your personal story of how you came to know Sadashiva in form, and what did you feel when you had darshan. Like, awaken their desire for that and offer it to them. That's a really common practice in this cult, is that they'll love bomb a person they want to recruit. Or if they feel like they're losing somebody. That happened to me when I first left, before I went public. They tried to get me back. Even Nityananda himself had filled up my inbox as recently as, I think, February or March of last year, like just a few months before I went public, saying, dear, my blessings, I hope your life is going well now. I love you so much. I miss you. Maybe you've heard the UN is now giving us our own country. It's called Kailasa. The door's always open to you. It's like, as long as they think they can get you on their side, and either paying them money or recruiting people for them or doing volunteer work for them, they will try to get you in. And it's a total pyramid scheme. That's the other thing. It is structured identically to those multi-level marketing schemes. In fact, yeah.
Do you think Nityananda knows that I tried to sneak in there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, for sure. He'll know all about you. He'll watch that. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There was a funny. We were in the. So I got invited to go to Peru to film with this ayahuasca center, because they had seen some of my videos talking about ayahuasca and these types of things. And I forgot. Oh yeah. So this lady, the shaman, she apparently learned this ability that she can remove negative energy blockages out of you, where she'll physically suck it out of your neck. Or it was in my neck, but it'll be like wherever in your body. And whether it's true or not, it's whatever. I kind of just thought it was fun to just have her do it. And she calls them chontas. And she started sucking on my neck to remove this chonta. And she spit out a thorn. And I was like, or no, it was a fishbone.
Whoa.
And I was like, how the hell would I have a fishbone in my neck? And the guy that invited me there, he goes, Nityananda. I was like, yeah, totally. Nityananda same thing.
Yoga had all those gems.
Yeah, right? Yeah. That's so funny.
Oh, but he's saying that the curse put it there.
Yeah, he said that Nityananda cursed me.
Yeah, I should go to Peru and get them sucked out of my neck.
Yeah, right?
Because...
So, yeah, you think he's seen my videos?
Definitely.
You think he's going to watch this one? Should we leave him a message right now publicly?
Sure.
Okay, what do we say? Hello, Nityananda. I know you have a lot of money. Please do not murder us.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good one. I would say, Nityananda. You stole thousands of dollars from me and from my mother and from my friends. You made me believe that you are a divine incarnation of Sadashiva. You faked your whole backstory. You didn't go on a 9-year parivrajaka. The pictures we were shown and told are your childhood photos, are other kids that you claim are you. They don't even have the same faces as each other. The jig is up. Everyone knows you're a fraud. You could redeem at least some of your spiritual sake by turning yourself into the Indian government, standing trial like a real man instead of like a coward and running and hiding. I don't think he knows. I don't know whether to say this to you or to him. I don't think he would even care, but he thinks he's beyond the law and he thinks he's above spiritual law because he has so many yes men around him telling him, you're great, you're Shiva, you're this, you're that. I actually feel sorry for this man because at some point his whole fraudulent organization is bound to implode. And whether it goes down in murder suicide like Jonestown, or a shootout like Waco, Texas, or just he gets dishonorably dragged away in handcuffs. You know, the higher somebody feels they are on a pedestal, the worse it's going to feel for them when they fall. And I think if I could give him any advice, it would be end this now, apologize publicly to all of your victims, pay back whatever black money you still have, turn yourself into authorities, and then genuinely do tapas for your crimes. Apologize to the people you've hurt. Start meditating for real. Start praying to Shiva to forgive you for impersonating him for all of these years, you know? But I think that's kind of futile. If he watches something like this, it would be just for the sake of giving instruction to his disciples on who to attack next and who to falsely accuse of a crime next, and, you know, how he can disprove whatever statements we're making, you know? So.
Yeah, I mean, if he believes in the things that he's preaching and he does know inside that he is being intentionally deceitful, I mean, that's if any of these like, if you have to work this out in coming incarnations, he's gonna have a rough time, because this has got to be deeply be carrying some deeply karmic stuff to be stealing people's spiritual energies for material gain.
Yeah, and just like the guru you guys had mentioned, who had told a woman that she's his spiritual wife. The fact he's done this to multiple women, he probably had that ego where he didn't think we would ever talk to each other, and find out that the same things he said to me, he said to others, the same thing he said to Arti, the same thing he said to Vinay Bharadwaj, he also said to Jordan Lozada. I really think he felt he could maintain his web of lies by just making his victims believe that they're his chosen one, and that it would be Guru Droha to talk about it. Somebody I spoke to just who recently got out of the cult, who I celebrate every time somebody writes to me and says, guess what, you know, and I took off the coffee and I'm home and I'm free. That to me is a little celebration. Man, it makes it worth.
When Drita leaves, I'm gonna celebrate.
Yeah, when Drita leaves, we need to have a big party.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and Prasida too. I kind of think Jillian, his wife, would have left already if she wasn't kind of stuck with him. But I could be wrong. Maybe they're both equally into it. But I think she has more of a heart for the kids than he did. I think I started to say earlier, I didn't finish it, that the day I lost my respect for Drita was the day I went public about what the kids told me in Toronto. And his way of refuting what I blew the whistle on was by posting something on his Facebook wall that said, Sarah Landry just accused me of beating kids with a stick. And
he's very sensational.
He's very sensational. And in what I posted, I said the head of the Gurukul forced the kids to beat each other. I never said a Gurukul teacher beat kids. I said Maud Vait forced the kids to beat each other. And so the moment I saw he had posted that, basically, I think they call it ad ridiculum, like blowing my words so far out of proportion and out of context that it sounds ridiculous, and then refuting it that way. That was when I knew he is so far gone. Like I was brainwashed. I was a true believer. I was fully on Nithyananda's side about everything until I saw the tears in those kids' eyes. And that's what did it for me. I could no longer go on with it, knowing kids are getting tortured here. And I kind of assumed that Jordan and Jillian, who we called Rida and Prasida, I assumed that that would be enough for them too, that it would shake their belief and that they would have the decent, basic human compassion to care enough about the kids that they would stand up for those kids. I even messaged her privately before I went public, telling her who the kids were who had confided in me. You'll notice, like in all of my public posts, I never named the two kids in Toronto because I care about them. I don't want them to be hurt or punished for this, or to have reporters knocking on their doors. Like I respect these kids. But I did privately message Jillian Prasida, the Kundalini Yogini, blissful athlete's wife, and told her, this was the date they told me. These are the other people who were in the room who witnessed the conversation. This is what they said happened.
It's all legitimate.
These are the other kids who corroborate the story. And she responded back saying that she just wishes everyone could go their separate ways peacefully and be grateful for what they had and then leave it. And I would have done that. I would have left the organization peacefully, you know, with gratitude for the good experiences I had, you know, all the temples I got to visit, all the scriptures I was familiarized with, all the yoga that I was taught. I would have left, yeah, if it was all legitimate and if nobody was getting hurt, you know, if people weren't getting swindled for thousands and thousands of dollars they can't afford to pay, if kids weren't crying because of the PTSD of having been beaten up by their friends because they're failures in the eyes of the one they think is God. You know, it's so horrific what happens to people there that I felt it is my responsibility to those victims to speak out because they can't. You know, their parents are brainwashed. So if they speak out, they've got nowhere to go. They have nowhere to run. They have nowhere to hide. The kids in that Gurukul whose parents put them there and whose parents believe that the fraud on the golden throne is Shiva. There was one girl who told me that Niti had requested her to send him nude photos of herself when she was 17. And when she said no, because she wasn't comfortable with it, Ranjita yelled at her and tore up a book of poems that she had written about Nityananda, saying, you know, you said no to the master, that's Guru Droha. You've abused him. Here's a 17-year-old girl who saw him like a father figure, refusing to be sexual with him, and she's being told you abused him. You know, it would be like if somebody went up to Rose McGowan and said, how dare you abuse Harvey Weinstein? Like, it's just so maddening to me that these kids are being hurt. This girl told her mother and father what had happened, and the parents said, well, Krishna had many gopis and gopikas. You should be grateful that he's chosen you as one of his. So that means the parents are siding with her abuser. I really feel like if I didn't go public and share this stuff, I would be letting these kids down. It's kind of like they saw me as the one person who will speak out for them and possibly get them some help. So how could you not? You know? And when Jordan and Jillian continued to support that cult, they know I'm not a liar. They know I didn't have any animosity. They know I'm not an anti-Hindu CIA agent, Vatican plant.
Oh man, I pray they do this kind of stuff for me. I love
abuser, whatever other false accusations that cult has made against me. That they've accused me of paying $1 million each to all the people who I did interviews with, like Marion Braun and Joanna Lasoka. Like, as if I had millions of dollars to give. There was one lady, Mahavidya, she made a 21-minute PowerPoint presentation linking me to Epstein and saying that I'm a member of the Illuminati. Oh yeah, enjoy.
I love that.
They will if you
Yeah, I just gotta make a couple more videos.
You've got to make a couple more videos, and I think what would push them to do that kind of thing against you is if they felt really threatened. You know, I think they do this to those of us who really
Okay,
threaten
good. I'll get to my
them.
power. I'll get to my drawing board.
Yeah, get to the drawing board. Because in my case, I know they got scared because I actually contacted human rights organizations and children protective agencies in India. And I filed an FIR with the Bidadi police. Actually, I tried. Let me rephrase that. I sent a signed affidavit, notarized by a lawyer, to the Bidadi police and the Ramanagara police and the Gujarat police. And the police there told me I had to physically present myself in their police office in India before they file it as an FIR. But my local Canadian city police, the police in my hometown, told me, do not enter India. They said that because of the false accusations from the cult and because of the threats, that they felt I would be in danger if I went to India. So I think the cult got really scared when I filed, police reports against them. And because people who were there know that I'm not just some random person saying he's a bad guy. Like, I lived with them.
You were almost the
They
Western
know I was
face in a
there
lot of
with the
ways.
cool kid. That's literally what he called me. His exact phrase. He said, "You are the Western face of my organization." When he slept in, I had to give satsang for him. I had my own throne on his stage where I would sit and talk. He really made me his mouthpiece. He gave me the instruction, don't leave my room without the full set of jewels worn by Davy. Like, he really boosted my ego into making me feel like a living goddess. He told me I was a living goddess, actually, in those exact words. He even told me that one day he wanted me to take over all of his paid programs and give darshan in his place. Not just me and a girl named Sadashiva Priya, who's still sadly following him. But he told the two of us he would have one big throne in the middle of the stage with his murti, and two thrones on either side, one for her, one for me, and that people would come up to receive darshan, and that we would hug them the way Amma, the hugging saint, hugs people. That was his vision for our lives. So yeah, like it's not like somebody who attended a program or two started speaking out against him. It's somebody who his entire community knew as a leader there who blew the whistle. And like I said, like, since I've come out, more and more and more kids and adults have come to me behind the scenes to report even more abuse that they experienced, other people who were sexually victimized, other people who were beaten, other people. One girl got tied up in a room for 2 days when they caught her trying to run away. Like, it's really sickening what that cult does.
Something I don't understand as an outsider, and maybe you can kind of explain how you would answer this when you were in there. Why would Shiva play it out this way?
They would always just tell us it's a Shiva Leela, that he does Leela.
It's just the worst answer. It's so convenient that it's playing out in a way where he benefits from like a giant castle in the clouds.
Yeah, he does. He would tell us stories that I'm sure are highly upsetting to Shaivite Hindus. He used to tell us all about Madurai Meenakshi and her husband Sundareshwara, who were incarnations of Parvati and Shiva, and were the ancient queen and king of the city of Madurai. And he said that Meenakshi was the matriarch of Madurai, and that Sadashiva came down in the form of Sundareshwara to marry her, but that he spent his days gambling, drinking, and womanizing while she took care of all the administrative work. And so he would tell us stories about some historical incarnation of Shiva as if it's good.
Right.
It's part of his persona to womanize, to gamble, to drink. He told us a story about how he ate all the idlis made by an elderly lady who didn't have anything to give before saving her from a flood. Like, he used to tell us basically, you know, over exaggerated false accounts of Shiva being a dick. And so we just assumed, okay, this is how incarnations of Shiva act. And I think that's a really sad thing too, because he accuses me of being an anti-Hindu element.
He
The
is.
bloody
He really
anti-Hindu
is.
element. He's the one making a joke of enlightened masters from India's
Yeah,
sacred
1,000,000%.
history. And yeah. But yeah, no, if you want them to start really attacking you, threaten legal action. I think that's one of their triggers. Or you know, vow that you're going to keep exposing more of them. Maybe I'll ask some of my friends who have gotten out who haven't gone public yet if they would give you the exclusive interview. I'm sure if you interview another person who left the cult as like the first one, if it seems like you're actively involved in outing them, they will definitely attack.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I want some like crazy conspiracy theories where they make PowerPoints of how I'm connected to some crazy stuff, and they got like me doing crazy symbols or something. That stuff's fun.
Yes. Yeah, I have to be really careful with my hand language in videos because
That's
they would
so
freeze
funny.
frame on something what you just said and say, "There's proof he's
That's so funny.
Illuminati."
I love that. But the thing is that they're so extreme. It almost seems like satire. Even their attacks don't
Yeah,
seem like it's just like you're not even. It doesn't even seem realistic. Like CIA agents and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Raping
Yeah.
minors at times when those minors are actually 20 years old and nobody ever does the math, and you know, they've called me what, a sex addict or a sex maniac, and it's like
That's so funny.
it's so far from the reality, like it's so impossibly fake that what's kind of funny is that some of the people who still believed in him lost their trust in him because of those false accounts and false accusations, and reached out to me privately and said, you know, I know you, I know this isn't true. The fact that Nityananda is saying this about you now, I know he's a fraud. And so it's like this in some ways very intelligent criminal mastermind. In other ways, he's just a bumbling idiot who keeps shooting himself in the foot. Like, you know, prove she's Illuminati, and then people who actually have studied Illuminati know, you
The
know,
smear campaign
I'm not rich.
that they did against the parents of the kids that the parents were saying that they were kidnapped.
Yes.
That I thought that was that's so dark to smear campaign parents that are trying to get their kids back.
Yeah. That whole story, this happened after I left. And at first, the father of those girls had tried sending me some messages in Facebook, but I ignored his messages because I was afraid it was going to be another attack. Like I thought if I take his call or if I open his message, it's going to be more dirty laundry, anti-Hindu cult leader, you know, rapist, this, that, the other. I thought he was going to just make fun of me. But yeah, I finally knew he was going through his own process with the cult when I saw the news story that they had kidnapped.
Yeah, this
his
is
daughters.
national India news.
Yeah, it was. What had happened was his oldest daughter at that point in time was in Ecuador with Nithyananda, and he didn't know where she was. She was 19 years old, so she was legally an adult and had the right to travel freely. but nobody had told her parents where she was. And that's upsetting, of course. And his younger three kids, who were 17, I think 14 and 12, were in the Gujarat Adinam. So because there was so much, police inquiry in Bidadi, where the Gurukul was, where all the kids got beaten in December 31st, 2017, they moved all the kids to a place in Gujarat local Gujarati devotees had donated. So they basically had their run of a school there. This man, Janardana Sharma, he was actually a higher up in that cult organization than I was. Like, he was closer to Nityananda. He was really inner circle. I was more just on stage, but he was like behind the scenes, much, much higher than me. So he fully believed. He was a committed devotee. So was his wife. And then he got a message from one of his daughters saying, can you please come to Gujarat and rescue us? We can't leave. We can't eat. We can't sleep. I don't know the details of her message to him, but basically just saying, we want out. And they couldn't just walk out. Their parents had to come get them. So that was, I think, when he first tried to reach me privately. I know for a fact, because he told me that before his kids asked him to come get them, he didn't believe my videos when I spoke about the Gurukul beatings, because it was hidden from the parents. The parents were told it's an ahimsa, nonviolent school. But when his kids asked to be freed, that's when he started to listen to what I was saying. And then when his wife reached Gujarat and knocked on the gates, the adults who were there wouldn't let them see their own kids. They told them, basically get lost unless you have Nithyananda's approval to be here. You can't come in. We're not going to let you see your kids. We're not letting the kids leave. And for a week, they tried to get the approval. They were still doing the obedient cult member, dancing their dance, trying to get approval from Nityananda to see their children. And meanwhile, they went to the police in Gujarat and went back with police to get their kids. And when the police raided that Gujarati compound, their kids weren't there. And that's when the kidnapping scenario, that's when the charges of kidnapping were framed against Maharana Priya, who was the one who took those kids to, I think it was an apartment somewhere in the city that the parents didn't have the address for. Meanwhile, the 17-year-old daughter had turned 18. So she was then legally an adult, and she was put on a plane. From what I understand, she was sent to Trinidad, where a group of the other female sannyasis were back then. But Janardana and his wife don't know for sure which country she was in, because despite filing habeas corpus with the court there, that the daughters had to present themselves physically in front of the judge, the daughters wouldn't do it. And then they started the smear campaign that you've mentioned. And I'm sorry to rehash all the details,
it's perfect.
but just in case somebody watching does. Instead of appearing in court when they were ordered to, the girls started putting videos on social media denouncing their parents, saying that their dad had sold them into childhood prostitution and that their mother was having sex with a young guy behind the dad's back and that the dad was beating the mom. Like, they made all kinds of ridiculous, far-fetched false accusations against their parents.
Did they take it back eventually?
No, they're still in the cult. They're still there. Like I said, just last night I had a talk with a lady who recently got out, and she told me that there was a day before all of this started when she was talking to Lodra, the eldest daughter of this couple, and that they were basically just talking about their lives, and that the girl said to her, I was so blessed to have wonderful parents who always did whatever was best for me, who, when I asked to go to Gurukul, they let me, and whenever I wanted something, they gave me. So she said that when these two started falsely accusing their parents of being just terrible people, that was when she knew it's all lies. because she had heard from her personally how great her dad was before. The two younger kids, at least, are back home with their parents. And the two people who were charged with the kidnapping are out on bail. But from what I understand, they have a fairly strict probation where they have to check in with the court once a week. Yeah. And I have mixed feelings about it. Like I see those two ladies, Ma Prana Priya and Ma Priya Tatwa. I see them also as victims of this cult. I don't think of them as, evil criminals who kidnap these kids. I see them as brainwashed slaves to this fraud Nithayananda. Were instructed, take these kids to an apartment, put this one on a flight to Trinidad. And they wouldn't have questioned it and said, but is this legal? They would have just said, yes, Swamiji, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it.
That's crazy.
I think.
And then are they still a part of it? Those two? Yeah.
Yes.
And I guess they just probably consider it a sacrifice. So I don't know how they. Yeah.
Yeah. They do. In fact, like, I stopped watching the Frog's discourses because it's just, I find it too upsetting. Like, it's sad to me that people still believe in him and give their all to him, and he doesn't care about anybody. But friends of mine who were still watching him just to catch when he slips up, said that when those two were in prison, he blessed them and said he'll put golden statues of them in his temple, and that he himself will worship their statues for the sacrifice they made going to prison for him. So yeah, they would think of it blessing, like it's their boon that they got arrested. And again, that is kind of textbook cult members, like Ma Sheila poisoning that city in the States, or like the people in Jonestown swallowing the poison Kool-Aid. They think it's their blessing to suffer for their guru. So what they don't realize is that history will remember them as brainwashed victims who committed crimes for him. They think that they are these chaste, obedient devotees who are willing to do anything for Sadashiva. It's sad. And it's especially sad that family is still broken, that the parents still don't know where the daughters are, and that, like, it's literally adding insult to injury. They were already hurt when their kids were taken away from them, and now their kids are being used in the slander campaign against them. No. Like, I can't imagine. Can you imagine saying that kind of shit about your mom?
Absolutely.
I wonder if there's going to be a Netflix documentary in 15 years.
So it's
there could be. The story's juicy enough.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we could keep going, but we're already on 2 hours.
Yeah. Oh, damn. I haven't been watching the time. Yeah.
We should do a second one, because I feel like we still have so much stuff that we could touch on. And we could just talk about life and talk about spiritual.
Yeah, this is really informative.
Be so focused on Nityananda.
Yeah. I'd be up.
Do you want to promote your Etsy shop, or is there anything you want to say?
Sure. I would love to. Yeah. Thanks. I do have an Etsy shop called The Art of Gems. And I've kind of gone back to my original seeker roots, where I like meditating with crystals and reading my tarot cards and, do automatic drawing as a form of meditation, and just listening to existence directly instead of trying to seek it through a human form. So yeah, if anybody is interested, etsy.com/shop/theartofgems. They can find some of my art and my drawings, and jewelry.
And
of course, I made these.
Can you show again?
Oh, sure. Yeah. One of them is Herkimer Diamond, and one is Iolite with Larimar. And then I made these earrings. They're just hoop earrings, wire wrapped with tiny little Herkimers. Nice. So, yeah. Thanks.
Also, if anyone is interested in digging deeper into the story, you have some videos on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah, my YouTube channel is called Sarah Stephanie Landry. And I've got a playlist of videos where I've interviewed other people who escaped from the Nityananda cult, about, you know, the abuse they experienced there, the mind control that they went through, some stories of how they managed to escape, and how they woke up. I'd also say, like, if anybody is watching this who's on the fence, maybe still in the cult, and they're not sure what to do, I would recommend that they start watching Leah Remini's videos about Scientology, and videos on YouTube where people left the Westboro Baptist Church and started getting help. Because when you're listening to things about somebody that you believe is God, it can feel really sad and shocking, and they don't want to believe that their Swamiji did those horrible things. But when you listen to people, for example, who survived the Jonestown massacre, or who escaped from Waco, Texas, or who escaped Scientology, or other cults, it can put it into perspective, and you'll start being able to relate to their stories. And then you should start listening to whistleblowers of the cult that you're in. And I really think that it was Leah Remini who kind of saved me from this cult nightmare. Because right after the kids told me about getting beaten, when I got back home, there was an A&E marathon of Scientology in the aftermath. And the more I listened to people who left Scientology talk about how it destroyed their family, and they had to, you know, shun their mother who had left, or their kids who had left, or their friends who had left, that they spent all their money on, they weren't allowed to go out and do what they wanted. It was only then that I realized, like, holy shit, that happened to me. So I think for people who are still vulnerable and still in the cult, researching cults in general instead of, you know, what's being said about the one they're in, it's less confrontational. So I would recommend that. Or, you know, if any is watching this and they have a friend or a loved one in the Nityananda cult, I would say it's not smart to tell them your guru's a fraud, he's a womanizer, he's a child beater, he's a rapist, he's evil. That's just going to make them try to fight you. But if you say something like, hey, I just watched this really interesting documentary about Waco, Texas, you should check it out, they won't feel that that's as much of a threat. They might be more open to it. And ultimately, what I want most in all of this is just for the good people who got caught up in a bad thing to get out. You know?
And also, so thank you for coming on. It's really interesting to me. And I think, like, the beautiful thing is that ultimately it's still, in a lot of ways, a Leela that's playing out for you, and it's still really, like, cracking open your heart. It might have been dramatic, so who knows why your karma played it out so dramatic for you, but it's still ultimately, you know, it's still a Shiva Leela in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
it's cool.
I've thought that. You know, one of my first spiritual experiences when I was a kid was I had a vision of Kali. You know, long before I knew who any of the Hindu deities are, or what she is, or who she is. I just saw this beautiful woman surrounded by glowing skulls with a bindi, and her tongue was stuck out, and something drew me to her. It wasn't scary. And I kind of like to think that maybe on some level, Mahakali was preparing me to, you know, help fight this demon. And I don't think it's just me. I think she's blessing a lot of people to do something similar. So yeah, I still love Hinduism.
Yeah, you're not an anti-Hindu.
You're totally right. I'm definitely not an anti-Hindu. No. And I'm definitely not a Catholic Vatican paid implant. I was reading tarot cards for a living, but Catholicism considers that evil. Like, they wouldn't have picked me, you know, they'd have sent some nun from Italy, you know.
Well, anyway. Thanks so much for coming out here. We'll definitely do another one. Yeah. And JR, thanks for hopping on with some laughs and some giggles in between.
Yeah. I mean, it's really good coming from our side of it to hear this, because I don't know if our guru would have spun out this hard, but he definitely wanted Rolls Royces. I remember him telling me that he wanted to have or not a Rolls Royce. He wanted to have a very specific car, like that governors drive in India, so that he looked official. He wanted more than one of them. So the fact that he would say that tells me he definitely had his eyes on, like he definitely knew who Nityananda was. He had connections with Modi as well, and like through all those weird networks that they have, he knew what was up. And I don't know. It's just interesting to see our thing kind of imploded on itself before it could explode. But
yeah, because the thing is like the Baba we were hanging out with, he didn't have the resources Nityananda had. He was just a guy in the jungle. But I think in a different context, he might have gotten to that same extreme. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe not. Hard to say. It's hard to say.
I don't know. It is hard to say because
Anyways, so that's for the second podcast. We'll touch on that one next time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much, both of you guys. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna pee my pants. So I'll text you in a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye, Sarah.
Yep. Bye,
nice
Sarah.
meeting you.
You. Bye, Dakota.
That's it, boys. Oh, okay. Pee time.